Good morning and welcome to another exciting edition of BTL Day 4, number 111, triple ones, 111 with the man, Frank SCALISH.
111.
100 seems such like a long time ago, Frank.
It does, doesn't it?
It does. This is actually a recorded show. I am at Bugs Island or Kerr Reservoir. It is day 2 since the tournament started on Wednesday, and hopefully I'm fishing with the hopes of qualifying for day 3. I will be fishing. It's just hopefully I'm not trying to survive, and I'm thriving, not surviving. That's the name of the game at Bugs Island.
I want you to thrive.
I would like myself to thrive too. You do know that today for show 111 is airing, debuting on May the 4th.
Beautiful.
And I, shockingly, have never seen Star Wars. Ever. Like, not one. I've seen a little bit of like half of one, but I don't really understand it. And everyone says, May the 4th be with you. You know, that's a thing. You haven't heard of that? I thought everyone knew about that. May the 4th be with you. So when I kept saying that, like leading up to it, you didn't understand why I kept saying May the 4th?
I thought it was May the Force be with you.
Yeah, but May the 4th be with you is like celebrated as like
National
Chinese
Star
New Year,
Wars
national holiday for National Star Wars Day. Are you a Star Wars guy? Uncle
No,
Frank?
I am not.
Have you ever been a Star? You have seen them though.
I've seen one of them, in its full entirety, the first one, and then one of them partially. You know.
I feel like Star Wars, the people who are in it's kind of like bed fishing guys. There are guys who are either like, not really into it, or guys who are like, dude, I can't wait till they get on the beds. It's all I do. It's kind of like the Star Wars. You're either all in or you're not really into it.
That's a fact. That's a 100% fact, which is what our entire show will be about today.
That's right. It is some of the country. Well, in Florida, they've been spawning since
December.
Since December, in South Texas and stuff. But the majority of the country, I would say the first week of May is prime time. Might be a little early for up where you are and up in the northern parts of New York and the Northeast and stuff. But as a whole, that whole middle band of the country, first week of May, pretty safe bet that somewhere on a body of water near you, there's some rolling bass.
Yeah, we could go April, May, June.
April, May, June.
Beginning parts of June.
It's a magical time of the year because you still have everything in front of you leading into the fall. We're talking barbecue cookouts, 4th of July, the 2 major holidays, Labor Day, Memorial Day, and then you catch them off the bed. So you start the year off with your big bed fish.
Yeah, that's it. And it is May 4th, and that means the new spine craw colors are now available on lurenet.com.
Do you have any of those handy? Or
yeah, I do actually. I got all of them handy.
Oh, I should have checked that before the show because I honestly did not know that.
Yeah, so we have, and this just pains me to open these bags.
Why?
Because then I can't hang them back up.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm only tearing a corner. We have GB Hayes.
Okay. We have seen that color before in
everything. Yeah, in everything, and the lizard. Which is one of my favorite colors, by the by. We have Junebug Red.
Okay.
We have a really cool color called GB Plum, which looks like it's plum with green and blue.
You're
flake.
Opening multiple bags.
I'm opening this one because
you do for the Day 4 listeners.
That's right. I want you to see this.
That's a cool color.
Yeah. It's cool. GB Plum.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm going to show you a really sneaky little smallmouth color.
Okay.
Because I have to. I
can't let 4 new colors?
No, there's 6.
Okay.
So this color, and let me know if I need to take it out because I will. It's Pumpkin Groove. I'm taking it out. Take it out.
There's just a tad bit of reflection there.
Yeah, this is a great smallmouth color.
There you go. It's like a watermelon green pumpkin combo with gold fleck and black fleck in it.
It's actually orange flake.
Orange fleck.
This is a smallmouth killer right here.
Very nice.
Yeah,
and if you use code BTL, capital BTL 100 at lurenet.com, you get 15% off of your purchase through June 30th.
That's correct. And then another color that I like that is really growing on me.
You're open all the packs.
I'm a psycho. A color that's growing on me. It's mud fleck. So the back is like a dark black green pumpkin.
Yep.
And then the belly's a little bit lighter. It's almost like a brownish color.
It's like a hybrid Okeechobee craw color, is it not, Frank?
Yeah, it's more like a black green pumpkin brown with blue flake. This color's growing on me a lot because this thing will work in clear water, dirty water, stained water. It's really a good all-around color. And the last color is dirt purple, which is another color that's really super cool. Look, I'm struggling with this bag, man. There we go. They're hermetically sealed. So dirt purple is very similar to the color I just showed you, but it's got green and purple flake in it. This is another really cool color. So nice. I'm really happy to see that the colors that they put in them are really good colors, to have in a craw style bait. And like I said before, the spine craw to me it's such a great bait. It's one of my favorite baits because I could flip it, I could Carolina rig it, I could put it on a shaky head. It's just a really versatile soft plastic. I love the thing. So anyway, I wanted to get that out of the way because I don't know how long this show's going to go.
We have 4 main components to the show. This is the spawning. This is Frank Scalish's spawning manifesto.
So basically how we're going to break the show down, I'm going to do largemouth behavior on structure lakes. And when I say behavior, I'm just talking about spawning areas. Behavior. Right. On structure lakes, largemouth on grass lakes. Then I'm going to go smallmouth on inland lakes and smallmouth on the Great Lakes. So they're very different. There's similarities, but there's differences. So I'm going to do the largemouth first, just because I want to.
It appears as though you're shuffling some papers. Do we even have diagrams and maps for this? Oh my gosh. Multiple.
Yeah, multiples.
They look very colorful too.
Some are.
Oh, you're in for a treat today. So it's a 4-part show is what you're saying. There is something in here for you unless you exclusively fish Florida.
Correct. Well, I mean, but I have some Florida stuff in here too.
Oh, okay.
So there is stuff for everybody. For all.
The floor is yours.
Okay. So anyhow, so what I got, the first thing I want to talk about now, I don't know if this is obvious or not obvious, but I'm going to talk about points. Main lake points, points in pockets, points in creek arms. These are oftentimes overlooked spawning areas. And so what happens is if we have a point, now this could be anywhere. This could be on the main lake. It could be in a pocket. It could be in a creek arm. They usually spawn on the inside corners of the points. They don't normally spawn out on the tops of them. They always choose the inside corners of them. Those are real high percentage areas. Now, here's the thing about points. Usually, you're only going to find 1 to 3 fish on these inside corners. It's not a place you're going to go and find 30 bass spawning. They're usually in individuals. If there's more, I've seen 3 or 4 at the most on some of these inside corners. So if you're running spawning bass, understand that the the points inside the creeks are going to go off first. The points in the main lake pockets will go off second, and the points on the main lake are the last to get them. So when everybody else there's no more spawners anywhere else, you could probably find some on main lake points towards that tail end of the spawn. So what you want to do is you're going to look for on these areas, you're going to look for hard bottom, a rock, boulders, not like a big rocky point, because they don't want that. They want isolated stuff like a stump or a boulder, even a dock pole. And this happens, and then it's usually one bed per item. So if there's a basketball sized boulder, there'll be one bed on it. If there's a stump, there'll be one bed on it. If there's a dock pole on the inside swing, there'll be a bed on that dock pole. So it's not a place you're going to find multiples. It's just it's a one for one and done thing. The next thing you look for on structure lakes, main lake marinas, very, very high percentage spawning areas. The bass actually, you'll have way more than one or two go in. There'll be a lot of bass in these marinas spawning. Depending on the makeup of the marina will be depending on how many areas in that marina they will spawn on. So the high percentage places will be the back corners of the marina. So your high percentage places are going to be the back corner. Can you see that?
Oh, absolutely. It looks like an aerial photo, Uncle Frank.
It is an aerial. It'll be the back corners of the marina. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason this isn't a shallow marina is because I'm also going to double this one up for Great Lakes smallmouth. So you see the high percentage areas in here. All right. So now, and then also don't overlook these right here. Mm-hmm.
It's just basically like a pond. If you just walk up to any random farm pond, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to go to the corners.
Correct. So now, check this out. We're going to say that these slips over here house sailboats.
Okay.
So if you go into a marina, and I'm going to do a quick piece of crap illustration on the fly.
I don't know. Last week you did that eelgrass one, and your bass was so anatomically correct in 20 seconds. It was terrifying. I was trying to draw a bass. I actually tried to sketch a bass after you sketched your bass last week, and it looked like a challenged goldfish. Let's just say that.
Well, that's okay. Challenged goldfish. They all have a place.
Yes.
Okay. So if you see sailboats,
a lot of sailboats. I see sailboats all the time.
In a marina.
Like a row of them, just the row. Like when you walk.
You know what? I'm going to actually see here if I can do this hull. I don't know exactly what sailboat hulls look like, but we're going to just take a rough
hull, HULL, sailboat hull.
Sailboat hull. We're going to just take a rough approach here.
This is good. Where you're going with this, because there's a bunch of sailboat, I believe, that's under the water, the hull.
Yeah. So this is okay. So here's where I'm going with this. So when you see sailboats, okay, here, let me get rid of. I'm holding too many.
How do you draw so accurately?
I don't know. It's just one of those things.
It's just so smooth.
So when you see the sailboats all tied up,
yep.
The bottom what happens with the sailboats is there'll be a flat that comes out, and then it has to drop down for this thing on the bottom, for the keel on the bottom of the sailboat. So what they usually do with sailboats is they put them all in one row, and that bottom will come out, drop down, and then flatten out, just like this is right here. Sometimes they'll put them in the middle rows where it's 10 to 12 feet deep and you don't have to worry. But if you see the sailboats pinned up against
any of the bank, wall, riprap wall,
any of the walls, This is what the bottom is going to look like right here. And this is the spawning flat for them right there.
That money zone within 3 or 4 foot of the wall before it drops off into deeper water.
100%. So here's what happens. They'll slide up there and they'll spawn right on the walkways of the docks. Okay? That's how they do the sailboats. Now, if you have docks that have poles in them, wooden poles, even metal poles that go into the ground, they usually spawn on the poles, the last 2 poles to the shallowest 2 poles, unless the water is crystal clear, like in some of the spotted bass fisheries and some of the smallmouth fisheries, they can spawn almost all the way out to the end of the dock in 10 to 12 feet of water easily. So, but ordinarily high percentage, we're talking largemouth, high percentage, the 2 poles closest to the wall. If they're floating docks, they spawn underneath the dock where it meets the wall or meets the riprap underneath the walkway, which is very, very high percentage spot. So you want to pay attention to that when you go into a marina, because you could look at the boats and get a really good idea of what's underneath there by what boats are docked where. So that's just a trick to use.
That's good stuff. Hold that up one more time.
This one?
That? Yeah, no, the sailboat. I don't know how I had not known that.
Yes, and see, I know this because a lot of places where I fish have sailboats in them.
That's a Great Lakes deal, isn't it?
Or a river system.
Okay.
River systems is where I first saw it, and once I
tried to draw the same thing, and that's what mine ended up looking like.
It looks exactly the same.
No, it doesn't.
It looks exactly the same.
It looks like a bathtub with a box on the end and a par 3. I just wanted to see if I could do it.
You did it. It was perfect. I would know exactly.
Hold yours up.
I would know exactly what you were saying by that.
Not even close.
Dude, mine looks like a trolling motor, for Christ's sake. So anyhow, that's the marina deal. Okay. Now, some marinas, when you go in them, are going to all be flat. All right. Theoretically, there could be spawnable water everywhere, but the high percentage places are against the wall, first dock poles. Those are the high percentage places. Walkways, always go to the walkway for spawners. Now, if you're talking creek arms, okay, everything applies in big creeks. On some of these lakes where your creeks might be, 1,000 acres, you treat that like a mini lake. So your points apply, your flats apply. I didn't even go to the flats. Why don't I have the flats here? So, okay, so when you're looking at, that's Great Lakes. Hold on. Where's my flats?
Did you do one for the flats?
I absolutely did one for the flats. Oh, here it is. So when you go to Main Lake Flats, okay, the same stuff applies. You have cover like stumps or broken grass.
Mm-hmm.
All right. You'll have points. They'll be on the inside swings of the points, all the points.
Yep.
Also, they'll spawn around hard cover, the stumps, et cetera, et cetera. Now, when you get into a situation like this is a place where you're not going to find gobs and gobs and gobs of spawners. There will be there. But remember, for each item is a bed. You follow me?
Yep.
So what happens is, I'm going to talk about, right now, in fact, I'm going to talk about where you hear guys go, oh, and I pulled up there and there was 30 bass spawning in the same area. Those are grass flats. Okay. typically on grass lakes. So let's just flop over to purely a grass lake. So in grass lakes, I'm going to look for these grass flats. Now, I want good water off the edges of the flats. That's important because that's what's going to, your highway, the bass are going to travel. We talked about this before on other shows. They use contour lines like road maps. So in their quest to spawn, they're running these contour lines. They come to these big grass flats and poof, up they go. But all grass flats are not created equal. You must remember this. So what a good flat has to have, okay? It has to have some sand, some hard bottom, shells, and scattered rock. I don't mean solid rock, just a boulder here, a boulder there, a couple pebbles here, a couple pebbles there. It could have all of the above, or it could have one or two of those items. Now, obviously, we're talking grass lakes, so you know it has grass on them. So this is what you're going to look for. Now, there's certain types of vegetation that lend themselves very well to spawning behavior. So let's talk about it. The first type of grass, and I learned about this grass in Florida, people were calling it pepper grass. They said if you're not around the pepper grass, you're not going to catch them. So I looked up what the hell pepper grass was, and it's actually it's called floating pondweed. So that's what it looks like. The leaves rest on the surface. They're shaped like willow leaf spinnerbait blades, and the bass spawn at the base of those things.
They love those things.
They love them. So here, you should have another picture with a multitude, like a pack.
Yeah, you're gonna have to keep chatting because I gotta find it.
All right. So they grow in big clumps, big clumpy areas of them. And so when you see, you'll see about maybe a patch of this stuff the size of your boat, and then another patch and another patch. Those are good ones to fish because they're a little isolated from the big conglomerate of grass. They're easier to manage, easier to fish, actually. And so that's kind of what one of the grasses that you'll focus on. There it is. And you can see on this particular picture here, this pepper grass is mixed in with, it looks like coontail.
On the back half of it there,
yeah. The back half looks like coontail to me. So this is a good patch because you have two types of vegetation together. Anytime you have multiple types of vegetation together is a high percentage area. Even if you don't know the names of the grass, you go, oh, look, that's different from that, and that's different from that. There's three that I got to fish that area. And so that's a good high percentage area. The next type of grass bass like, and we talked about it on the last show to spawn in, is the eel grass. And eel grass will grow in heavy concentrations, and then you'll see it in scattered. There'll be a couple of clumps here, a couple clumps there. I like to always first go in on the isolated stuff because it's high percentage and it's easier to fish. Then you could start breaking it down into more detail when you get into heavier clumps. Correct, that's eelgrass. So that's the eelgrass. Now, another type of vegetation that I found, and this I learned on Santee Cooper fishing the backwaters during the spawn on Santee, dollar pads. The little dollar pads are way better than the big giant lily pads. The bass love the dollar pads to spawn in. So this is the stuff you want to pay attention to. This area right here, this grass flat that we just discussed, this is the place that when you hear guys go, and there was 30 or 40 of them spawning in the same place, because there's enough stalks, enough stuff that multiple bass could spawn in the same area. Those are the places that you hear guys like in South Carolina and in Florida and stuff like that, where they pull into an area and there's spawners everywhere and they can literally fish one section for the entire tournament
And just manage it.
Because those are the kinds of areas that get the most active spawners at one time. Now, another type of vegetation that doesn't get a lot of attention are arrowheads or mother-in-law tongues, whatever you want to call them. And what I do with these things, I look for small isolated patches of it, like maybe 10 or 15 of these arrowhead plants together. Very high percentage. And they spawn on the arrowheads. They literally spawn right up against it. Where all the stems come out, they will literally put the bed right at the base of that. Because the bass like some form of cover around that bed. They do spawn in wide open places, but most of the time they got some form of protection on one side of the bed or another side of the bed. And so those are mother-in-law tongues. Now there's different types of mother-in-law tongues. The ones that I fish a lot in Florida, they're tightly packed and they look like a huge plant.
And I've always heard that that's because it's hard bottom around that, and those roots are hard. So it like if you want the hardest bottom in it, it's where that group of arrowheads are.
That is 100% correct.
And it's real easy to point out because they're not everywhere. You'll have 100-yard stretch of bank and there'll be like 6 clumps of arrowheads.
Correct, which is beautiful. And then here's the thing. It's usually one bed per clump.
Mm-hmm.
So you're going to go in there and you're going to catch, there's going to be one bed on a base of a big arrowhead plant. There'll be one bed on it. So if you work it, if you can't see the fish, because in Florida, I was blind casting to them because I couldn't see the fish. So I was blind casting to them. And what happened was the spawn was starting to take place, but it was still pre-spawn. So we had both things going on at the same time. We had some setting up, staging, and some going into spawn. And so what I was doing was I was blind casting on those mother-in-law tongues. And the cool thing was I was catching a lot of the pre-spawn females that were roaming around there looking for a place. So it worked out for me. So the ones that were already bedded down, a lot of the big females bailed on it and the bucks were on them. So I was catching a lot of bucks up against the stalks and catching the females just off of them. So it's a really cool, that plant right there is a really sweet place to fish because you get them in all stages milling around those isolated clumps of that arrowhead. Now I think that's really kind of, I got paper everywhere. I don't know
does that handle the largemouth stuff?
It pretty much is a yes, the largemouth stuff's kind of quick because we're so accustomed to it.
Yeah.
Most guys already know. Now on grass lakes, marinas also play, docks and dock poles also play, cypress trees play, because they'll spawn right on the cypress roots themselves. So that stuff plays. And you have to remember, they're going to have some type of bottom composition. They're not going to spawn in black mud.
Okay.
So you got to have some type of harder bottom. Now, there's some situations where the vegetation, as it dies, it leaves that debris and it gets gooey and soft. But when they scrape it away, they usually have sand, clay.
Those are the beds that just pop.
They do. They stand out like donuts. They look like donuts. And here, like some of the lakes, they look orange. In the tannin lakes, the bed will look orangish in color. So you want to pay attention to that. And some of them will have a light ring around the outside and a dark ring in the center. So, but those ones stand out like a sore thumb. You can totally see that without a problem.
But what you also did was just give a clue as, you can't always see every single one, whether it's light penetration, watercolor. What you did was, hey, here are some high percentage spots where during spawning season, you can put your bait in, you can soak it, you can fish it with confidence and know that you're probably around a fish that doesn't want something in its bed.
Correct. And see, because a lot of times you can't see them.
Mm-hmm.
And here's another thing. A lot of your really big females, they like to spawn deeper. And so you really can't see them. Now, there's some guys like Shaw can see them. Like I was on not Clear Lake, the Delta. I was on the California Delta, and I ripped into a marina because I knew the fish were spawning. So I ripped into this marina, and I started trolling motoring, going like this around all the docks, and I'm just looking, not even fishing, looking, and I'm like, oh, there's one over there, cool. And I'm trying to find the bigger ones. And as I backed the boat off, some of the times I could see a decent one just out of sight range almost.
Mm-hmm.
So Shaw comes up to me, goes, "Hey Frankie, how's it going?" I go, "Dude," I said, I'm there's more fish in here than I thought. He goes, "Yeah, did you see them 2 7-pounders when you first went in?" I'm like, "No." He goes, "Yeah, they're you can't they're out farther." I'm like, "Are you kidding me?" He goes, "No." I go, "I can't. I didn't see him. That dude is uncanny sight fishing."
Mm-hmm.
Shaw's actually got a gift when it comes to sight fishing.
I heard that his mustache actually serves like eye black to reduce glare off the water.
The glare.
And it's actually functional.
That's right. It cuts the glare. So the truth of the matter is, I went through this whole marina, found a bunch of spawners. He went through right behind me looking. Neither one of us were fishing. We were trolling motors and rolling. And he went through there. He went through there way quicker than me because I think he could see more than I could. Mm-hmm. So he bailed. So I said, he told me about them 2 7s. I got to go look and see if I could find them. And so I went back to where he said they were, and I was looking and looking and looking. I found one. I could not ever find the other one, and it was painful for me to see this fish, painful. So, my hat's off to that dude because he's got it going on.
Was he just letting you know that he knew where they were so you could just stay the hell away from him, or was he genuinely wondering if you caught him?
Well,
when he had in the opens, I've rolled through this year, and the guy's like, "Did you catch that 4-pounder in the back?" And in my way, that's his way of saying, "I know there's a 4-pounder back there. Now you can't go back to the back because I just told you it was back there."
No, this was in practice, and I just think he was being legitimate because Shaw and I are pretty tight. So I think he was just being legit and saying, "Hey, did you see him or not?" And I told him I didn't see him. And I never went and fished on them either.
You didn't have a tendency to be like, "No, but I did see that 10 just down the bank."
No, did you
just
see that?
Little mind games,
dude? Did you see that 5 and that 9.5 paired up? No, I didn't do that. No, we're pretty honest with each other, him and I. So yeah, so it was really interesting. But here again, the marinas, I mean, they're just high percentage areas. You got to go when you see them in its spawning season. If it's legal to go inside, you got to go in and take a peek. Mm-hmm. You have to. That's just the nature of the game. But but smallmouth are pretty, for the most part, they're a lot easier than smallmouth to find their bedding areas and find them, but they're harder to catch than smallmouth. When you find largemouth on a bed, it happens, but very rarely do you pitch on him and he eats it before that bait touches the bed. With smallmouth, a lot of times when they're on a bed, they'll hit that bait before it ever gets near the bottom. They come up and smash it. So smallmouth fishing on beds is way easier than largemouth fishing. I'll give you one trick about bed fishing largemouth. I'm thinking about if I'm going to let it out or not.
You don't even do it. What you
Yeah, I'm
gotta
gonna
let
do
it
it.
out. You can't
Yeah,
tease us like that,
I
Frank.
could tease us like that because it is after all day 4. So
Yeah, but it's May the 4th. You got to give up the juice.
May the 4th be with you. So,
Yes.
so okay. So here's one of my tricks. When I'm sight fishing for largemouth, very rarely do I go microscopic on them. I throw normal size stuff on them. I'll throw a 6-inch lizard. I'll throw the spine craw. But my favorite bed fishing bait is my jig.
Really?
Yeah, I'll throw a 5/16 or a ½ ounce jig on them. And here's what I do. There's in a bed, and everybody, this is probably common knowledge, but I'm
Mhm.
going to do it anyway. In a bed, there's a spot about the size of a quarter or a silver dollar. That is the magic money spot where if your lure goes there, that fish is taking it. And it's small. Comparatively speaking to the bed size, it's small. So I'll take my jig. If I see the bass on the bed, first I take the jig and I throw it past the bed and I crawl it into the bed. Once the jig is into the bed, I'm watching that bass. I'm watching it. I start moving the jig. If the bass is just sitting there not paying any attention, I'm not close. Or the bass is
Mhm.
not ready to deal. So I'm not close. So then I'll change the angle of my boat. I'll make another pitch. I'll drag it in a different way. If I see one fin on that bass do something, I'm very close to where I need to be. Once I get into the area, the bass's behavior completely 100% changes. His fins all become erect. He gets nervous and he starts to move around. Now I know I'm in the place. Okay. And so that's the whole, I look at that bass. I'm so focused on the bass, I can't see nothing else but that bass. Once he starts getting fidgety, I know I'm close. So let's say I throw in there, I get him fidgety, he or she's getting goofy on me,
Mhm.
and I know I'm close. So now I'll make another cast and I'll move the bait a little bit farther over. And if she starts to nose, if her nose starts to go down, I'm going to catch it.
You got her.
I'm 100% going to catch that fish. So now let's go the other way because with largemouth, it's more often the other way. The bass doesn't give a crap. It's not paying attention to you, but it's not leaving the bed. The key is it's not leaving. If it leaves and disappears for a while, it's not locked on hard. And you got to wait for it to come back.
Which means
And
it's a new spawner that just hasn't dropped its eggs that it has to defend.
correct.
Okay.
So here's what happens. If it swims away, but it only swims away 3 or 4 feet, I'll wait it out. But sometimes they'll swim away and they swim away and you could see them, they're already 10 feet away from the bed. I don't even monkey with that fish because it's never going to sit for you to catch it. So now let's go back. I got one locked on. It's not leaving. I lay my jig out there. It does nothing. I change angles. It does nothing. I do everything. It does nothing. Doesn't even care that lure's in the bed. So now what I do is I make a very precise cast over the top of the fish, but in front of its dorsal fin. So I'm by his head, her head, or his head. I'm over its head, and I slowly manipulate that jig. So now all I have to do is just pop it a tiny bit, not whack, just bump it, just like doink like this. Just a little
Mhm.
tap, tap. I tap her right in the head and take it out of the bed as fast as I can. I touch her with it and take it out of the bed. All of a sudden, she starts getting, whoa, you know what I mean? I'll do it again. I'll throw it in there. I'll tap her with it and take it right out of the bed. Now, what happens is she'll spin around. She's looking for it. Where the hell did it go? The next time I throw it in, I throw it right in front of her nose and she smokes it before it ever touches the bottom. That's how I catch fish that are completely not interested in anything you're doing to them on a bed. And that's one of my bed fishing tricks that I
like it.
do. Like I bump her. Like I've bumped one fish several times. And the minute I take it out and she spins around looking for it, I
Done.
got her on the next cast.
Yeah, that's good stuff.
Yeah. So do you got anything to add?
That's pretty good stuff.
All right. So now we're going to go see.
I mean, the only thing I know some guys, there's a difference, and that's what you covered on the end is, quote, beating them up instead of, finessing them. And that's what you're doing with that jig.
Yeah. I don't have the patience to sit there and play with a fish for 30
I was gonna
minutes.
say, how long will you stay on one that appears to be active, but you just can't get to bite?
I'm going to go 10 minutes or so, unless
Because, I mean, you hear guys be like, oh, I locked down on that sucker for an hour and a half.
Yeah, no, that ain't me.
Okay.
No, that ain't me. If I can't get her to bite in the first 10 minutes, I'm on it. I'm out. And I won't spend that kind of time if it's a 2 or a 3 pounder.
Right.
If it's a big one, I'll spend the time. But if it's not, I'm going to catch it or I'm not. I'm not playing.
Okay.
So that happened to me in Texas. I found one on a bed. The spawn was pretty much winding down. There wasn't a whole lot of fish spawning. I found one spawning, and it was in practice. And I said, well, I'm going to see if I could catch this thing. And I pitched on her and pitched on her. She didn't want nothing for nothing. I pitched that jig over her head. I bumped her in the head, pulled it out of the water. She spun on the first bump. I threw the jig back in there. That jig never went past her face, and she choked on it. And I said, whoa, that's pretty cool. So I've been doing it ever since. and haven't been, I just don't play with them like that.
I hear you. All right. I like that largemouth, the structure lakes versus a grass lake. So we went through all the different types of grass. We went through the different structure. We went through how to target the largemouth based on how they're acting. We did, marinas, points, secondary stuff, main lake later in the year to catch the late spawners, back in the stuff earlier in the year. I think we're ready to move on to inland and Great Lakes smallmouth.
Yeah,
on the bed spawning.
So we're gonna start out inland. Again,
so would this be like Cherokee?
Yes, it could be basically any inland lake from where you live to up north where I live.
You 10 killer.
Yes.
Okay.
Now I don't know if those lakes will have grass in them.
No.
But the lakes up by me will have grass in them.
Of course.
Some won't. There's one that doesn't.
That would be my favorite one.
Not mine, although I do rail them on it. So anyway, okay, so inland lakes. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look for pea gravel points.
Okay.
Pea gravel points got its, I don't want to say infamy, but got its thing from Kentucky Lake and lakes in that region, because you'd go down and you just look for pea gravel points and fish pea gravel points. So we'll say pea gravel points, but points in general, basically the same type of stuff we talked about with the largemouth. You're really going to find them on the swings, just like we talked about with the largemouth. They'll be on the swings. But here's the thing with smallmouth. Good call, dude. You are on top of it, man.
And if you don't have a pea gravel point near you, you could go for Lowe's, and for $4.98 a bag, you could make your own pea gravel point.
You can make your own.
Sorry, it's been a long morning already.
That's outstanding, dude. So that's so good, man. So if it's not a pea gravel point, it's just got to have hard bottom.
Okay. So clay
will work. Scattered rock is even better. Not rock tight together, but a rock here, a rock there. And wood or vegetation on them is good, and sand is good. Okay, so if you've got 1, 2, or 3 of those things on the point, it's a good point. Remember, points will not harbor tons of spawners. So when you're fishing points, you're generally looking for, 1 to 4 fish. You're not going to find 30 fish on a point.
Mhm.
It just doesn't happen. So that that's the point game. So now you can have grass flats in inland lakes. Same stuff we talked about. You're going to want to find grass, but the bottom composition is important for smallmouth. It's got to be rock sand mix. Grass and sand is good. Grass and rock is good. Grass, sand, and rock together is the best, and not rock fields where there's no sandy spots. They like the sandy spots.
That's Oneida.
100%.
That's the
dude.
flats at Oneida. You got a freaking clump of grass here. You got a couple freaking boulders the size of your head, maybe the size of the front deck of your boat there. You've got a freaking bare patch of sand that you can't see anything. Some more grass in front of it, maybe a tuft of
Yes.
grass coming out next to a boulder.
That is 100%, 100% Oneida. And so now we're talking about these flats, but you got to realize something else too. The better flats, the better main lake flats, all right, are protected from strong north or east winds because they don't want that cold north wind ripping through those areas. They're protected in some way from that heavy north wind. Now, later in the spawning season, not so critical because the water temperatures are pretty much warmed everywhere, so the wave action's not going to cool you down.
Okay.
But early in the year, when you get early spawners, the wave action will mix the cooler water up and drop the water temperature. So you just want to pay attention to that depending on what time of year it is. What time of, early spring or late spring. And of course, we don't have to belabor marinas because we did that already.
That doubles.
Yeah, same scenario. 100% the same. And then,
Smallmouth will spawn in those marinas just as much as largemouth, really. You won't just get the Great Lakes largemouth that trickle into the marinas.
No.
Okay, I was unaware of that. I thought that was a predominant largemouth spawn in the marinas.
Oh,
on
no.
The Great Lakes.
And then here's what you'll have up north. You'll have both in there at the same time.
I thought you were going to say angry marina owners.
Well, yeah, then they'll come and spray you with a garden hose.
Hey!
Get out of here. You're not supposed to be in here.
This is a man-made dugout marina.
That's right. That's right. So then you got to think about this. Any man-made cover.
Oh.
High potential spawning places. Retaining walls, foundations, docks, obviously docks, old boat ramps. The sides of old boat ramps is so money.
Really?
It's unbelievable. Oh, it's money.
On the Great Lakes.
On the Great Lakes and that's inland.
Inland.
I'm doing Great Lakes in a minute, but inland, old boat ramps, sides, money. Yep. Spotted bass use them like crazy. The old boat ramp sides to spawn on. And the spotted bass, not that we're doing spots, but they'll do everything that the inland largemouth and smallmouth will do. So will the spotted bass. So these are just typical spawning locations. Now I'm going to probably get into a little more detailed on the Great Lakes.
Okay, let me ask you a question before we get to the Great Lakes, Frank. I've heard, and I can't remember what the rule of thumb is, whether it's the north side, the south side, the east side, the west side. Is there a directional side of the bank that you're going to start looking for this stuff on first? Like, are you going to look for the bank that gets the most sun or because it warms it up, or the shade? Is it, do you always start in the east or the west, or which side do you start when you're looking for beds?
Northeast, northwest, or northeast.
Okay.
Because it's protected from the cold wind, the north wind.
Okay.
I truthfully, before the spawn is actually when everybody knows they're spawning, that's when I pay attention to the sides of the lake that I need to be on that protect me from that northeast or northwest wind.
Okay.
When the spawn's in full blown, I don't worry about it too much because at that point in time, the bass are doing their thing and everybody knows it. So you're not going to find those sneaky early ones.
I got you.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of the deal with the wind. Now, when I say Great Lakes smallmouth, a lot of this is going to apply to your big northern lakes, like Simcoe and lakes like that, like Champlain, Oneida. But for the most part, we're going to talk about Great Lakes themselves. So the first thing I'm going to do is look for main lake flats. Now I have a map of this, and we're going to use this map a lot because there's a lot to talk about on it. So a main lake flat, and this let me just for clarification, this distance here, can you see that?
Yep, the distance between the land and the kind of tip of the point.
Right. So this distance here on the Great Lakes, it could literally be anything from 50 yards to several hundred yards long away from the mainland. It could even be farther away than that. So that's typically what I'm talking about when I talk about a main lake flat. Now, the main lake flats are typically, we'll say, 8 feet to 15 feet deep. Some of them are 20 feet deep because the smallmouth can spawn in 20 foot of water. Like here, on parts of Lake Erie, smallmouth could spawn 20 feet deep.
Just because of clarity and light penetration.
Clarity and light penetration. Same thing on Lake Michigan, Ontario, Thousand Islands. It's all the same. They're all the same. Okay. I'm not gonna go too heavy into current because I don't want to get into,
That's a whole show.
The river systems, right? So, but there is current on the Great Lakes too, but we're not going to deal with that right now. So main lake flats. Now, also places that they spawn on the Great Lakes is marinas and harbors. We're not going to pound marinas. We already did. Harbors are exactly the same way. Exactly the same way. And then, of course, shallow protected bays that everybody, there's some famous ones like Presque Isle and some of the other bays up north, like Bay de Noc and shit like that. Very famous bays. The smallmouths will migrate into those areas by the thousands. Okay. And then you treat those bays like separate lakes.
So you're looking for the flats, the points, the
100%.
Everything in that bay is now a lake.
Correct.
And then you even go forward into it, and then inside a marina, inside the bay, you're treating that like its own little thing.
Exactly. And the smallmouths, they'll spawn in estuaries off the main lake. Like swampy marshlands.
Oh, is that like what they have off of in some of the canals and stuff off of like St. Clair and Erie and stuff like that?
Right. Okay. And so the estuaries. Now, here's a unique little deal. I'm gonna get back to this because I got details. Okay. So here's a neat little deal. There's also smallmouth that will migrate up rivers, just like salmon and steelhead do. It's a completely different faction of largemouth. They won't spawn on the main lake. They won't spawn in the harbors and the marinas. They'll run up the rivers and spawn. And they'll go so far up the rivers, you can't believe how far. I'm talking like 30 plus miles up these rivers to spawn.
Every year.
Every year, like clockwork. Now, the only thing different is the time they make that run. It went off two to 3 weeks early this year for the river runners. They went in way early this year. My steelhead buddies were catching them 30 miles up the river the second week in March.
Wow. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like biggins?
Yeah, Lake Erie runs.
What?
Yeah.
On like float flies and
steelhead flies. Swinging flies for steelhead.
Like, there's one big brown comes up.
Big brown, yeah. They do it in all the rivers on all the Great Lakes.
They even do it on
They even do it on the small rivers in some of the inland lakes.
What percentage would you say? Like what? Like if you're at Buffalo at the bridge there, like what percentage of them run up that Niagara?
Well, the Niagara's
different because you go over and then you're like, whoa. I knew this was a bad idea.
We should have stopped at the buoys that said don't go any further.
But I mean, I'm just saying, let's say you've got
like they'll migrate into the Niagara, but they peel off into the marina.
Okay, that's a bad example. But
Right.
like on the rivers where your buddies are catching them.
They're
like, are we talking big numbers or just a few?
No, we're talking numbers.
Wow.
Yeah, we're talking numbers. Like, what's the river in Chameau Bay? I forget the name of it. But anyway, the Salmon River, maybe, I think it is. Might be the Salmon River. But anyway, all those river systems all along all the Great Lakes, there's a small faction of smallmouth that will run up those rivers just like salmon, just like steelhead. And they go way up them to spawn, which is a very unique thing. Very, very unique. But let's go. You're looking it up, the name of the river?
Oh, there's a Chameau River.
Okay, so but all of them, they don't have to be gigantic rivers that barges go up. They could be, trout streamish type things.
Let's so it just. I mean, you're not giving me share screen.
Don't go to Lake Erie.
No, I'm in Chameau Bay.
Oh yeah, okay, perfect.
So you're talking about like these rivers.
100%.
Like Guffin Creek, loaded with 5-pounders.
Yeah, and then what's the little river north of that? It's a little stream north of it. So where Matt's arrow is, if you come out of that big river system, there's a smaller river system. It's a stream. It's almost more like a stream. That will get them too.
Huh.
They all get them. Oh, you're going full aerial on us here.
Yeah. So they'll run up that stuff.
Yeah, they go up there. It's just there's just and I think it's the pelagics, to be honest with you. I think it's the ones that roam on Lake Erie in wide open spaces.
Oh, this is probably a good example. Where was that? This is probably a really good example.
Yeah.
Like that.
Right.
Oh,
exactly.
Cool.
So that's what they'll do, and they'll go to the gravel areas, the shallow gravel areas, just like the trout do, and the salmon, and they'll spawn there. So now I gave you areas, to look for on the Great Lakes. So now I'm going to cover the flats a little bit in more detail. So what you have here is these are staging areas, and this could be anywhere from 25 feet to 20 feet, the staging areas. So typically what happens is the first pull-up spots that these smallies will make are on all the outcroppings of the flat. Anywhere the flat has an irregularity on the outside edges of the flat are staging areas.
Okay.
Okay, so now if you find the staging areas, now you know pretty much how they're getting into the areas that they want to spawn at. So what you'll do is this is the true pre-spawn areas right in here, right in here. These are the true pre-spawn. This is before pre-spawn where they're staging. These are the pre-spawn areas on this flat. So when they get up on top of the flat to spawn, this could be 10 to 14 feet deep. It could be, in some instances, 20, depending on water clarity. That's how deep you're looking for these. So as we've talked about in freaking total belaboring a point, scattered rock and sand, scattered rock. This is where they spawn.
Yeah.
And
let me ask you this. Is it going to be a couple 100-yard stretch, or let's say you've got a mile on the Great Lakes of scattered rock and sand? Could they be all around that? And then the high percentage areas are going to be the ones that are most adjacent to the high percentage pre-spawn areas.
Yes. The areas that are going to get the most flow of fish are going to
Yeah.
be the areas that have the most staging areas out in front of them.
I got you.
That entire flat can have sections of that flat where there's massive amounts of spawning activity.
So there could be obvious pre-spawn areas where you've got a lot of people that are like, oh, well, look, here's rock piles, here's pre-spawn, here's where they pull up to. But the sneaky stuff would be a pre-spawn area that's a little bit subtle that then leads to a spawning bait that's not really around anything else. They come up, they sit on that, and then they move it. And that's where you roll up and you're like one hitter quitters on 20 or 30 of these suckers.
That's exactly right. So what happens? So here's what happens. Like if you go to, and it's no secret, so I'll say it and then I'll take the fallout when it happens. But
there's someone from Presque Isle Bay going, no, right now.
Well, yeah, but yeah.
That's massive. Or
that's
Chameau Bay, I mean.
Yeah, Chameau's massive.
Yeah, anyway,
but like if you go to Lake St. Clair and you look, you know the main spawning flats because there's 150 bass boats on it, and they're all milling around. It's no secret. You know what I mean? There's just no secret. You'll see all the boats. Those are the main spawning flats, but you could literally find smaller ones that don't get any attention or nowhere near the amount of attention. Now, keeping in mind, you're not going to be in hundreds of fish, but you'll be in enough fish to keep you busy. And if you're in competition, more than anything, if you're in competition, you are liable to get better quality because those fish haven't been beat on for weeks and weeks at a time.
Yep.
So that's really, I mean, I want to say we glazed over it. I don't think
that's pretty good, dude. The only thing you didn't do was you did go over some baits mainly for the largemouth. We talked about a few things.
Right.
Smallmouth are kind of the same thing.
Smallmouth are easy on their beds. I hate to say that, but they're easy because most of the time they hit the bait before it even touches the bed. Which is like in the old days when we used to drift sock around Lake Erie all the time. Hey, man, how deep you catching them? Oh, we're catching them in 15 feet. And then everybody drifts 15 feet of water with a drift sock for 4 miles and catches 100 fish. Those were spawners.
I got you. So the bait just got around it and they said, not today.
Correct. But I mean, trick baits for me that I like to do, I like the spine craws, the cross style baits on them. I love the flick shake on them. 4 or 5 inch dinger. I actually will go to the 5 inch when I'm targeting really big smallmouth. I'll go to the 5. Lizards is fantastic. Carolina rig with a lighter sinker is a sick way to catch spawning smallmouth.
I've experienced this topwater for spawning smallmouth.
Fabulous.
I've experienced this up in Canada, and it is bar none 100% the most fun I've ever had largemouth fishing. It was just a pop-ar around boulders with that grass and gravel mix around it. See the light spot of the boulder, cast a pop-ar, and they hit it like they were pissed at it. Every single boulder.
Yeah, my favorite topwater bait for spawners is a crazy shad. Cotton Cordell crazy shad.
Mm-hmm.
I just like it because I can work it as hard or subtle as I want. And the bass can't stand it. So it's just, it's the spawning season is a fun time to fish. A lot of people, you have your anti sight fishing guys and your pro sight fishing guys. I'm smack dab in the middle. I won't go out of my way to sight fish because I will find fish I could catch not sight fishing. But if I'm in a tournament and it's a spawning tournament, if you're not sight fishing, you're getting your brains kicked in.
Yep. One more question that I want to get, especially with smallmouth. Some of them have blood red eyes and some of them don't. Spotted bass, I've noticed that too. Is there any what is the meaning behind the red eyes on those fish? Do you have any idea?
I wish I did. I'm going to look it up now because that's
you know what I'm talking about though?
Yeah, I'm writing it down.
I'm just curious if there was anything that you could tell if that meant they were in a certain stage, or if that was just a really pissed off one, or what.
No, because I catch them with red eyes in the summer and in the fall too. Some have them, some don't. I don't know.
Okay.
That's a good question, but that's going to be something I'm going to look up. Red-eyed smallies. Now there's a red-eye bass in the river systems down south that it looks just like
no,
a
I'm
small
talking
mouth,
about these things because I don't think they have red 24/7 or 365. I think it's just during certain periods of intense anger. Potentially like you, when someone tries to roll up on your Carolina rig offshore spot, you might potentially have temporary
red eyes.
Just
I get red eyes. I get a vein in my neck and one across the top of my head. That's what happens. That's how I change.
There's nothing wrong with that. You got to protect your water.
That's right. I hear music.
Yeah. There it is right there.
All right.
All about spawning. The 4 different stages. Structure and grass for the largemouth. Structure lakes, grass lakes. And then inland lakes and Great Lakes for the smallmouth. Great starting spot. Like I said, you could do an hour just on the structure, an hour just on the grass, an hour on the inland, an hour on the great, and then we didn't even touch the current.
Oh, no, we didn't even touch river systems.
But it's all good. All right, we'll be back next week. Should be back in studio. We might have to switch some times because that's the last week that I can practice, I believe, for the Eufaula Open, maybe?
You'll just have to let me know.
All right.
We'll be good.
All right. It sounds good. All right. This has been day 4, number 111 with the man Frank Scalish. We'll see everybody next week.